Good morning. This workshop is called Taking Charge of Your Own Success. It's a program that I developed for a local municipality at the request of the client who just really wanted people to start being responsible for their own career plans. And I'm excited about this program because I want people to feel excited that they're going to know what motivates them, and they'll have a much clearer idea of what things actually satisfy them and excite them in a job. Growing up, I knew that I always wanted to be a teacher. It was probably very clear to my parents. I did all those things that are teacher-like, organizing kids and showing them how to do things. And that seemed to be the way I lived my life all the way through school. So my career path or my education path was pretty clearly laid out. I knew where I was going to go to school. I knew what I would major in, and I visualized myself being a teacher. I wasn't sure exactly of what, but probably sitting on the floor with young kids. As it turned out, I found myself in special education, which I absolutely loved, and it was one of the most amazing, life-defining experiences that I'd ever had. I got to a point where I got a little bit burned out, and I didn't see a lot of options at that moment, but I knew that there had to be something else I could do that was something like teaching or training. And I discovered at that point the world of corporate training, and I segued into that. So really my entire life has been about teaching others, and it was always very clear to me. This workshop, and my situation may not be like yours, but the purpose of this workshop is to help you really explore what success is for you, and to consider what your values are and your ambitions, and how they impact your effectiveness at work and your motivation and the things that make you feel good. And I want you to get some insights into the way you communicate and the style that you use, on all the things that contribute to success. So, about 50 years or more ago, when someone went to work for a company, this probably happened with your parents and most definitely your grandparents. They joined a company assuming that they would probably stay there until they retired. They didn't usually have much choice in promotions or opportunities in those organizations. Those things were always decided by their supervisors, who made those decisions based on what they thought was best for that person or best for the organization. Well, today that doesn't happen. Today it's completely up to us to define what success is for us, to create our own ambitions and work towards that. So whatever that happens to mean for you. So let's start by thinking about personal ambitions. So since I always wanted to teach, I was different from people who never were really sure. In fact, there are people in their 40s and 50s who are still not really sure what drives them. But I didn't have to do the deep personal work that a lot of other people had to do. I had the clarity and I had the resources, but I was lucky. That being said, there were a lot of moments where I had forks in the road and I had to stop and reassess where I was going just to make sure. So I would stay on track and be happy in what I was doing. So for example, there was a time that a very good friend of mine who's become a mentor really recommended that I work in corporate communications because he knew I was good in communicating. And at the time I was working in a corporate environment, and I knew what that kind of work looked like. And it just didn't feel right to me. I suppose I would have been good at it, but it just didn't feel right, because whenever he asked me what I really love and what matters most, it always came back to, I really like teaching. So I was very clear about where I wanted to go. But let's focus on you now. What are your ambitions? Now, we've had a unique experience the last few months in dealing with COVID and the need or the requirement to be more or less quarantined and to have limited interactions. Jobs are changing and the environment's changing. So given all of that, this is a point in time for you to think about what you really want for your future and just exactly what kind of person you want to be. So what I'd like you to do is have a few minutes to chat with your colleagues in a group and share some of your ideas about that. So I'm going to put you into a breakout room where you'll have a couple of minutes to answer some of these questions. And what I'd like you to come away with is a single statement that defines your ambition. This is not something you have to put in the chat. This is personally for you. We are back. So would anyone like to share something that they learned about themselves in the discussion group?
Well, I learned something that I think about a lot because it changes, as your life changes. But things that have remained constant with me that I always seek out is every day is love and joy and health is very important, and peace is very important to me. So I incorporate those aspects into my professional life too.
Okay. So what does it mean? What does being true to yourself mean? Who can give me some thoughts on that?
Go ahead, Ray.
Being true to yourself, doing things that you enjoy, that you're passionate about, but that hopefully help the world and help other people, being the best person you can possibly be.
Okay. Anyone else, feel free to just put in the chat some of those ideas. It always helps when we can see what other people think about. Well, this picture is one of my favorites. This is my friend Leslie. Leslie came from a marketing background, and she was forced to move from her home in San Francisco to a home out in the county, and it was the first time she was able to have a garden. And she discovered that she loved the feel of soil and growing things, and she was actually very good at it. And that led to her going back to school and getting a degree in organic farming. And she then started an 11-acre farm, and including raising goats. So this goat on her shoulders is one of probably 150 goats that she raised, many that she actually birthed herself. And she began a business selling the goat milk and making the best goat cheese I'd ever seen, or ever tasted, I should say. But when you think about who you want to be and your ambition, you really have to reflect on who you are. And so this requires some deep work and thinking about the things that you're good at or the things you always go back to. And but also getting some feedback from other people. How do they see you, and what do they think is what really drives you? So understanding your values is probably the most important thing in achieving your ambitions. Your values are what drive you. Those are the things that influence influence your feelings and your gut level beliefs about how you operate. And every day we have opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities for everyone, and perhaps at the intersection of luck, but how many of those really lead to success? So if you want to achieve your ambitions, then and have work-life balance, then you really need to pay attention to what your values are and what are driving you, because it's not really what opportunity comes along, but it's how you make a choice to act in accordance with your values. So there's a real relationship between your values and your personal effectiveness, and your values and your ambitions and your success. So to really be authentic, to really be true to yourself, you need to understand what your values are. So let's take a look at that. All right, everyone grab a pen and a piece of paper, and let's make this visual. Now, this is a way for you to see something about who you are. Now, what I'm going to write is not necessarily what you're going to write, but here's a way to think about it. So there are a lot of influences in our lives. There are a lot of experiences that determine how we behave, what we value, and how we perceive the world. Well, some of these things for me are, first, I was the firstborn girl in my family. I was very strongly influenced by my dad. I'm Jewish. Now, I don't really practice, but my parents did, and so I was influenced by that, by their practices. I'm also a mom. I'm divorced. And I'm a baby boomer. One more thing I'm going to squeeze in here is that I'm short. Now, you may laugh, especially if you're tall, but really, if you're short, you see the world literally at a different level than someone who's very tall. So as a baby boomer, I was influenced by the Beatles music or Motown or the Vietnam War. And as a firstborn girl, my expectations were that I was to take care of the younger sisters, that I was the one more or less in charge. I was the boss of them. And so whatever these are for you, they create your view of the world and how things should be and how people should perceive you or respond to you. And there's no right or wrong with this. It's just the way we are. So let's take a look at what that looks like. I see that we are like an iceberg. Who we are, what we are about is what's viewed at the top. Well, people really only know what they hear us say or see us do, but there's everything else underneath the water. Those things that are our values and our drivers. And unless we actually tell people, they may not know what those things are. So it can be a little bit challenging to understand what, or to articulate what values actually are. But let's take a look. So I found this values checklist. This is very easy to find anywhere on the internet. And by no means is it a finite list. But what I'd like you to do, again, grab your pen and paper, and in about a minute, I would like you to write down the 10 values that you feel really represent you. And don't think too hard about them, just whatever pops up. After you've got your 10, then rank your top 5. All right, I think time's about up. Anyone want to share a few of their top values, or if you feel that you know your most important value?
Sure, I'll be happy to. I have down integrity and excellence, autonomy, competition, volunteering.
Okay, okay. Anyone else want to share?
I have number 1 is love, because I think if everything I do comes out of a good place. I have personal development, autonomy, spirituality, and it wasn't on the list, but anything intellectual, not intellectual status, but just intelligence, making good choices, intelligent people surrounding me, etc.
Okay. Okay, so I had it doesn't matter what people's values are. What matters is we recognize that we're all driven by different things. We're all motivated by different things. I had a woman in a class a few years ago, and she told me that her mother was this super adventurous type, that she climbed mountains and she did these extreme sports, and she wanted her to do the same thing. And she just wasn't motivated by that. Her thing was something else. But she felt that she had failed in the eyes of her mother because she could never really live up to her mother's expectations. But her mother's values were her values. They were not her own. This is really important in the workplace because people make decisions about our lives every day without really knowing what's underneath the iceberg. So it's a great tool to understand your values, but it's something that we need to practice. So I'm going to give you a chance to identify values and see if we can tweak this a little bit more. What I like to have you do is think of a time when you had a peak experience, something that was absolutely the most satisfying, rewarding moment for you. Or where you were involved in some kind of an event where it was quite emotional but had a great impact on you. And what I'd like you to do, I'd like a couple of volunteers, is tell us a story. Tell us this story in a minute or two. And the rest of us, as we listen, we're going to write down the values that we think represent this person. So who would like to be the first volunteer? This is for fun, and it helps all of us. It helps us all sharpen our skills.
I'll be happy to give it
Okay,
a shot.
awesome, Berlin.
Okay, well, let's see. So you made me think of a particularly joyful time. I was a member of a Toastmasters club, and they hold speech contests. So 2 days before our local contest, I asked, is it too late to sign up? And they said, no, not at all. So I did, and I won. So that means I was advancing to the next level, which was the area level. I won that. Okay, so that meant to the division level, and then the district level, the top level. And by 2 points, I eked out a win there. And I have to tell you that it all happened because someone was flexible and said, yeah, you can still sign up. It's not too late. And because they did, I went all the way up and not only brought joy to myself, but I brought recognition to my club.
That's fantastic, Marlene. You'll have to teach us some of those skills.
It was wonderful, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so to the rest of the group, what are some of the values that you think you heard in Marlene's presentation? I think I heard, okay, oh, Raphael, Rayanne, it looks like you're raising your hand.
Yes, I heard flexibility. I heard self-confidence, powerful speaking skills. I heard many, just an attitude of keep going, and also helping others or making others feel part of something, because she brought respect to her club. So self-respect, but respect from others. So I heard a lot of values there.
Okay, great observations. I heard accomplishment and I heard decisiveness. So Marlene, were we close? Were we on track, or what would you say?
Absolutely. I would add volunteering there too, because there was no financial gain at all. This was all just on a volunteer effort.
Okay. All right. So the more we practice listening or really tuning into people and paying attention to what we think their values are, the more we understand what drives them. But it also helps us to reflect back on ourselves and the things that are in our gut. So earlier you wrote down your professional ambition, or at least your ambition at the moment. So let's sharpen this a little bit now that you're a little bit more connected to your values. And, you know, if you have a clear picture of what your values are, you're going to be much more likely to move in the direction of those things that really matter and that give meaning to your work. So let's take a moment and go back to that ambition statement and either rewrite it or tweak it a little bit. I'll give you about a minute. All right, do we have a volunteer who'd like to share their revised ambition statement?
Yeah, Ray would like to volunteer.
All right, well, this is what I wrote down, but I need a little more time, but I just wrote to share love, light, intelligence with others in a job that brings me joy and a sense of accomplishment.
Okay, excellent. That's very clear and very specific to what drives you.
That sounds like very much like a personal mission statement.
Yeah, it does. So when you think about your future self, you always want to think, what is it that really matters to me? And that makes you true to your own beliefs and your own, your value systems. So great job, everyone. Great work. And in the next module, we're going to talk a little bit more about how you can brand yourself and network so you can maximize some of your opportunities. Thank you.